Welcome to BioStock. Cereno Scientific has been granted expanded access by the FDA for drug candidate CS1 in pulmonary arterial hypertension. Here to tell us more about what that means is Cereno's CEO, Sten Sörensen. Welcome, Sten.
Thank you.
Sten, I'd like to start out with a little bit of context. First of all, what is CS1?
CS1 is repurposed valproic acid. So it's a drug that has an epigenetic modulation capacity, which is actually then modulating the protein expression from DNA. Mm-hmm. So it's a new type of therapeutic agents that are able to do this, and we are doing it through HDAC inhibition. Mm-hmm. And we've taken VPA, the molecule, and put it into a very specific formulation called CS1. Mm-hmm. So it's a delayed immediate release formulation.
Mm-hmm. And you're currently evaluating this in a phase 2 study in pulmonary arterial hypertension. Could you give us some details about the study in brief, and also tell us about a patient case study that you had this summer?
Well, the study is, so first maybe pulmonary arterial hypertension is a very severe disease. Mm-hmm. So it ends with, mortality or death. Mm-hmm. And the mean prognosis for those diagnosed, mostly females, is 7.5 years. Mm-hmm. And that's with all therapy available. And so we are running a study in this disease after having received orphan drug designation by FDA, which provides us with a number of benefits, including 7 years exclusivity on the American market. But the study, we have developed the drug past phase 1 and now into phase 2. Mm-hmm. And the study is run in 10. We are aiming for an 11th center. 10 centers, and we aim to include and complete the study with 30 patients. Mm-hmm. And in the study, we have 3 arms. So we're testing, evaluating beyond the primary objectives, which is safety and tolerance for the study. We're evaluating 3 different dosages of CS1, and we're doing that over 12 weeks. Mm-hmm. Another thing that's, I think, would, just to mention is we're doing this study in collaboration with Abbott, mm-hmm. a major in medtech, and we're using their cutting-edge technology, CardioMEMS, which is an implantable device which can measure mean pulmonary air pressure as many times as you want, actually, wireless from the pulmonary artery. And we are obtaining approximately 2,000 signals of pressure over these 12 weeks, compared to a study where you take a right heart catheterization up front when the patient is enrolled and at the end of the study. Mm-hmm. This provides us with much less variability for each patient and a higher probability of being able to show the efficacy that we are aiming to measure with various 3 drugs.
Mm-hmm. Well, and speaking of that, last summer you came out with this patient case study with some very positive data from this patient using CardioMEMS. Could you tell us a little bit about this data and why it's important?
Yeah, I think, when you're pursuing a new drug in a disease, beyond safety and tolerance, which we believe we will have a good profile. This molecule has been in man for about 60 years for epilepsy. So, but what you want to do in a phase 2, where you also, in this case, are looking for efficacy, is you want to see signs of clinical efficacy if you can. And most studies, you wait until the end. Mm-hmm. In this case, a physician that was an investigator or is an investigator in the trial contacted Cereno and said, I have remarkable efficacy information on this patient, a 51-year-old lady diagnosed 3 years before and stable on 3 medications, so quite powerful medications. And she was enrolled in the trial and was given the highest dose of CS1. And after 12 weeks, the physician came to us and said, we should do something about this information. Mm-hmm. And originally it was aimed for a publication, a submission to American Heart. But based on the positive information and being so strong, we said we'll release it to the market and we'll move on that data. So what it actually was that this patient was in New York Heart Association classification 2, which is from moving from diagnosis, which is 1, and then to 2, you are very affected symptomatically by your disease. So given CS1, this patient reduced pulmonary arterial pressure with 30%, almost normalized, improved cardiac output, which is more or less cardiac function, with 20%, almost normalized. And in addition, other parameters such as vascular resistance improved. And the total efficacy of this impact was that the patient moved from very symptomatic class 2 to class 1, almost not feeling the disease. Wow. So this is something you wouldn't expect for most agents given to patients here. So we're very intrigued by this information, and we moved on this and agreed with Abbott and our clinical steering committee to do a qualitative data review. We wanted to secure, based on this information, the transfer of data with the CardioMEMS about efficacy and other cardiac functions, so we would have the best information possible when the study is done. And we did so. So in September, we pulled information on 16 patients, and we saw additional information that we had an impact of sustained reduction of pulmonary pressure in 60% of that material. And these patients, some of them had completed the trial at that time, and some were still ongoing. We also saw early onset of action and a potential pattern of dose efficacy on the pulmonary pressure impact. I think it's important this was only CardioMEMS data. The first patient was right heart catheterization data. So it's important to mention the distinction here. But the data from the readout in September supports that there is some kind of efficacy and positive efficacy of our drug in these patients. Maybe to just conclude, what happened this fall was that in November then, another investigator contacted us and required us to request an extended access, or which said here in Europe, compassionate use, for our drug to the FDA. And what that means is that FDA can grant extended access to a physician or from a company to patients of a drug that's not yet approved. So when we receive that request, most likely based on the fact that the physician believes it's working in his patients, we moved and as fast as we could to FDA, and we got this approved extended access program a week ago. So that further supports that we have something here for these patients.
And could you tell us maybe a little bit more about what this extended access means also in the long run for Cereno Scientific?
Yeah, I think it's worth making a distinction here. So an individual doctor can request by himself extended access to the regulatory authorities after and ethical approval and patient consent that can be then given if so. There is another form of extended access, and that's when the company requests such for its drug. And that can be done in a limited fashion. And then there's a third form, and that's when extended access program is available for all patients with that disease within the geographic area that has been approved. In our case, we have requested extended access for those patients that have completed our study, phase 2 study. So those physicians who request such, they will have an ability to continue with CS1 after the study is done. But it requires a local ethical approval by the hospital. Yeah. Which most likely will happen because it wouldn't be requested from the physicians otherwise.
Well, that's incredible validation then for CS1, because it goes to show that the physicians themselves, they see that CS1 works. Would you, yeah?
Yeah, we think so. It provides quite some confidence that we have something here that's valuable for the patients and for, treating physicians here. And I think currently the physician is pulling CS1 out of our hands, more or less, if you want to use a metaphor. But I think another value here, beyond, of course, the great value that these patients can be given a drug several years before it reach market authorization, if that will happen, which we believe it will. So the physician will be able to treat these patients with this deadly disease with something that probably works, based on what we've seen, way ahead of its approval. The other aspect here is that we as a company will be able to gather long-term usage in these patients and this disease as a follow-on to this phase 2 trial. And of course, the third thing is here that the regulatory authorities will be able to see that information. And in our future dialogue with FDA or European regulatory authorities, we will be able to utilize that information on top of the current 12-week trial that we are doing. So this is a win-win for patients, for the company, and for regulatory authorities, I think.
And finally, last question. Could you give us a sense of the timeline for the phase 2 study, especially now that you've received this expanded access?
Yeah, so for the actual study, we have communicated and we keep that timeline as a target. And that is that we will complete the study in these 30 patients and communicate top line by Q2. It's not that long until then. But of course, those patients that will be put on CS1 now for extended access, they will continue then to run. And that's an added protocol, actually. So we'll be able to evaluate these patients as we go. And it's important to mention here, I think, I don't remember exactly the number, but I believe we at least have communicated that 16 patients, I think actually 19 patients had completed the trial up to now as public information. So those 19 patients, if I'm correct here, they can already now, the physicians who have treated those patients can already now start with their ethical approval process, and when that's cleared, they can start giving those patients CS1 as soon as that's done. And I can mention here that we have several investigators in the trial that are in that process as we speak. So we have meetings with all the investigators now about their interest for expanded access for their patients.
Well, that's great. That's very important news, and we definitely look forward to seeing how this phase 2 trial continues, and we look forward to following Cereno for future updates.
Thank you. We too.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks.